2D, also known as second dimension, was first understood in the collective consciousness when Flatland, a novel written by Edwin Abbott in 1884, described the second dimension of side to side, backwards and forwards, but no up and down height. It is a story about a two-dimensional world referred to as Flatland, which is occupied by totally flat geometric figures who are introduced to a sphere from Spaceland, who comes to their world and brings Mr. Square a new perception about his world and what lies beyond. Within the second dimension reality of consciousness, this represents the mind only aware of moving forwards in life from a point in time, but never thinking to move up. When humans were in the start of their spiritual journey as a collective soul, they simply ate for survival and moved to populate the planet with their offspring. During this time of living in the 2D sacral chakra pelvis area, the main concern was sex and creation of other life forms on Earth. Within you, the sacral chakra is your area of sexual intimacy and connection, as well as connecting to the creative power of the universe to produce life. When this area is engaged, it gives the desire to create projects, art, and use the physical looks to express oneself and be seen in the world as desirable to others, to form sexual connections with them, many times to create new life forms. The second dimension is not yet a part of the ethereal or spiritual realms yet, as there is no up direction, so the main energy is focused on the material world and the body and bodily instincts and urges and drives. If sex is only coming from here, then there is also no love, heart, or the up dimension, but rather a movement from the bodily urges, programmed within to reproduce and experience physical pleasure and tension released through orgasms. It is the realm of animal consciousness, in the ability to reproduce and give life, but without higher consciousness of reason and logic. It makes the animals pure in their energy, though, there is no other intention within them than survival of their species. There is no evil ever in the animal kingdom, because they cannot choose anything other than surviving and reproducing at their level of consciousness. They mean no intentional harm when they hurt humans other than to defend their space and to keep their species going if humans invade their territory. Many tamed animals who have been around humans and live with them now are shifting into the 3D level of consciousness from the second dimension simply by being around other beings who function at a higher state than them consciousness-wise. It is like the idea of the sphere, humans, meeting the squares, animals, with the story of Flatland. For some group of animals such as cats, dogs, and horses that have been the main animals who are used by humans and work for them, they have been brought into the higher dimensions of consciousness now and are able to express back love and protection for their human owners. These animals go beyond the second dimension of survival of the species and reprocreate their young. They are able to demonstrate their appreciation and gratitude towards the hand that feeds them and gives them a comfortable, safe home away from animal predators. Since the house cat no longer has to fight for its food in the wild, its focus can move to more lofty visions of its world it perceives, and this is why cats and dogs have the ability now to express love in a way they may not have in the past, horses as well. The consistent hanging out with their human companion has pushed their evolutionary step within the animal oversoul. You may see a spillover of higher consciousness thinking even within animals out in the wild these days. When one part of the animal kingdom rises, the whole oversoul does. It is the symmetry of the sacred geometry within the universal pattern of creation that moves things in alignment with one another. This is also how humans moved from second dimension to the higher ones today. The focus on their world moved beyond sexual drives and in the act of creation. When that need was satisfied, then they began to establish a primitive sense of law and order in their tribes and develop language, engaging the higher mind. Physically, we know that in the second dimension, the earth would be flat, and all the beings of the earth would be flat as well without height, sliding across the ground as shadows to move left and right. But consciousness-wise, when humans are stuck or focused solely on the second dimension, then they are preoccupied by sexual urges and desires. This can be a wonderful thing to experience, as the animalistic urges of pleasure and ecstasy are experienced. But we are not two-dimensional beings, and so there needs to be the higher and engaged mind in who you have sex with and why you are doing it in the first place. People who move from their sacral chakra all the time seem to be caught up in an insatiable lust for physical pleasures, and the problem becomes the imbalance of not engaging higher thought, causing at times problems in lusting over those that will never return the energy directed at them. This is the area that can lead to moving from bed to bed with different partners, not engaging the higher mind into the act, but it can be also a wonderful place of expression of love that emanates from this dimension within when the higher dimensions are engaged as well. The body is a channel for the true consciousness that flows through you, embedded already in the higher dimension of reality, where all souls originated from. And the second dimension within is just as important as the root, to open up and allow that energy to eventually rise to the higher dimensions within yourself. The act of sex and reproduction is something that happens within all species on all planets. They may be asexual in the ability to reproduce without engaging in the act of physical sex, but there still is a reproduction happening. It's the beautiful way the collective consciousness decided to watch all species on planets unfold, through the passing down of genes and traits, and sometimes cloning themselves as well. This is all a process of life expansion so that the planets do not have a population of only one being, but so that communities can be established for all souls to know one another through the process of separation, which is needed for personal experience. Of course, once a species reaches a threshold of life capacity on a planet, there is nature to help balance things out and to ensure enough space to be comfortable to live. After all, we are not flatlanders in the flat land, and desire more directions of expansive movement. So now we are reminded about how important the sacral or second dimension was to us and is, because it is the foundation for all life of a species to progress and move forwards with the experience of expansion. All of the dimensions you have already passed, you can see and experience. It is your mind looking down from a high building and seeing all the levels below you that you climbed up. You passed through each in old lifetimes, and you have now risen above in this one. In the second dimension of human consciousness a very long time ago, at one point, mankind was animalistic in their behavior. They fought over territory just to survive and claimed the cave they needed for warmth and shelter. They killed one another over the food, and they learned to form packs and develop a sense of loyalty in gangs. But humans have been touched by an alien presence during their early years, being visited by people of the stars, who demonstrated another way of being. This was the next stage of progress needed to form the communities and think higher thoughts, and develop a sense of the unlimited self of what they can create on Earth. This is why aliens visit humans in the first place. As reflections of us, they move us along the path needed for progress of a whole species. Today, many humans are a few levels above the second dimension, but it is always good to be able to look back at hindsight and see how far you've come, while still understanding the importance of that phase and level you have been through. The following exercises will begin your journey of the second dimension of reality within you. I suggest writing your answers down in a journal so you can refer to them in the future, or just listen to them and think deeply. Number 1. Thinking about your own experience. Do you feel you gained mastery over the second dimension within you? Are you looking up in space dimension, or are you only aware of the life on Earth? Write down and give yourself a chance to see how far you have come to understand where you are above the second dimension. Do you feel you are just one level of perception above at third dimension, or many at this point in time? Number 2. Is your sacral chakra open and receiving the flow of the spirit of the universal consciousness? Take your paper and write down if you are open or closed to intimacy in that region, even with another person or with yourself. Don't judge yourself, but try to see that area as a channel to allow for all areas of your life to align. It may help to write down all relationship intimacy issues you have had in the past or are presently experiencing, and allow yourself new transformation where you can see progress is needed. Number 3. Flatland, full of flat geometric shapes, was a way to see this dimension in a way that third-dimensional beings cannot. To master the understanding of the physics of the second dimension, kneel down till you are eye level with a table and rest your chin on it. Now look straight ahead of you and see that everything on the table looks like straight lines and flat geometric shapes. If you were really in second dimension, you would not be able to see the top of things, and really only sides as flat shadows. Try this exercise to change your perspectives. Number 4. Know this as we go along this unit, because you in reality are from a higher dimension and experiencing life in the lower ones at stages and phases to progress through. Look at the animals around you and see that since you are the higher beings consciousness-wise, why it is humanity's duty to care for them. We see things from a higher perspective, so the way we take care of the animals or abuse them determines the certain pathways we progress on later. Animals are our mirrors to us. It is the same for higher dimensional aliens, looking down on us from their perspectives as well. Write down ways you feel connected to the animals living in your experience. What do they represent for you in a consciousness way? Number 5. Now that we see how animals are in our care from the second dimension, as nature is on the first dimension, what can you personally do to take on this role of caring for our animal friends? If you are doing already a lot, then write that down and give yourself a chance to enjoy a moment of feeling proud of yourself. Some humans have abused animals and still do, not understanding the greater interconnection to them. When you abuse those who seem to be lower than you revert to going back to a consciousness dimension lower than the thing that you abused. So if you have cared for many pets, volunteer time at a shelter, act kind towards and feed the wild animals who do come up and say hello, then give yourself a moment of fully appreciating the level of consciousness dimension you are at. And this concludes our lesson on the second dimension. Class dismissed, and I will see you for the third dimension next time.